Good evening, and welcome to the Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union Board meeting on Wednesday, May 25th. Before we start the meeting, I'd first like to invite everyone present to join me in a moment of silence for the families and community members of Robb Elementary School in Texas. Thank you. If you'd all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is the agenda. I have one addition to add under personnel. We have a leave request for Katie Loomis, so if you could add that. And that came out late in the second iteration of information from Christine. So with that addition, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Eric. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak to a matter not on the agenda to the board this evening?
Unknown just joined us.
My wife.
Okay.
Or some other unknown.
Just checking up on you.
I want to make sure I'm really here.
Yeah.
Hearing none, we'll move on. A motion will be in order for the minutes of April 27th.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. A motion will be in order for the carousel meeting of May 12th.
So moved.
Motion by Lynette. Any discussion?
I was in attendance, Tim here, for the carousel meeting, but I don't see my name on the board members.
It isn't.
Okay.
And my name was spelled incorrectly.
Okay.
Sorry I wasn't quick enough on the last minutes. There were 3 little typos.
Okay. If you want to just send those to Chris,
Yeah,
and
no
then
problem.
he can send them on to,
Christine.
yeah. Oh, just send them to Christine and she'll make them.
Okay.
All
Can
right.
I just leave this? I highlighted them.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll just put the correction on then.
All right, with adding Tim and the correction in spelling for Tina on the carousel meeting minutes, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of warrants. Everyone should receive their warrants in the Grcsu email. Any questions should be directed to Lewis. A motion would be in order for approval of warrants.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. It'll be very brief. It's a lot of what you've all heard at the local districts. I did share an updated PCB sampling schedule with you. I did reflect, I know that in the past legislative session, they did talk about pushing things back a little bit. So we do see that some of our GRCSU schools have been pushed back to 2025, kind of lengthening the period. So we will have some of our schools starting this summer, and then over the next 3 years, we'll have all of our 8 schools will be sampled through that. So we will have more information to go through. I know I'm meeting with the Proctor High School principal in the next week or so to kind of go through, the next steps, getting the letters out to the community members, as well as the Polton Elementary principal as well as the facilities directors. The one thing that we're still awaiting clarification on is initially they'd said that when we begin the process, that there will be an inventory done for all 8 schools. Now that they've got to push it back, 3 years, we're waiting to see if that's still the case. So we are working with our facilities directors just in case that if we do have to submit information on all 8 schools with regard to like windows, caulk, things along those lines, we'll be ready to go with that right away. So, but we'll provide more updates around the PCB sampling as we go along. But it is going to be a lengthy process, and you may have heard that they have earmarked some money out of the Ed Fund for remediation, but we'll see what the remediation looks like as we go through that. So.
And what do they say the turnaround time is for the report?
They said typically 6 to 8 weeks is what they're saying right now.
Okay.
So it should be a pretty quick turnaround. So as I said to Proctor High School principal the other day, the good news is we'll be right at the start of school. So, just, a nice start to the school year just with the PCB results. And we may have to make some adjustments, but I
Let's
think
hope not.
we'll have an idea about where we're at. But I know that I've already talked with Lisa and Louis and I have had some conversations, working through some different scenarios if we had to, shut down a small, portion of the school or for a duration of time, what things may look like, just so we kind of work through some different scenarios. We'll also start doing that with our admin this summer as well. And hopefully that won't be the case, but it's probably good to have be proactive, have some plans in place, so it's not just a knee-jerk reaction and where we're having kids sit at home, for a day or two while trying to figure it out. So. That is ultimately our goal. So, and then there are some other legislative pieces that were in there. I know myself and a few of the board members attended some 4 2-hour sessions. The one of the things that when I met with Jeff Francis and the VSA, kind of said to hold off on some of these because they're the details will be coming around funding, the weighting, the school lunches, PCB. And once we start to, kind of iron out the details, I've already talked to Louis about this, we'll kind of bring this to before the boards with the report to kind of understand, or better understand the impacts that these will have on schools, whether it be around budgeting or also just programming or resources or facilities. Okay. And then the last part is just we're, getting ready for the end of the year. We have, so we're finishing up with end of the year trips. We have graduations coming up, promotion ceremonies, so just
Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff, exactly. So a good start to the end of the year, or a good end to a good year, and get ready for next year. So
Good stuff. All right, anyone have any questions for Chris? All right, moving on to Lisa. And since Lisa has a presentation, everyone had her report. We'll kind of just slide by that and just move into the presentation.
Yep, that's fine. Do you want me to?
I need to refine it again, sorry.
It's okay.
I had it up.
I'm sending it to you right now.
Okay,
We gotta do it on this one though, right?
I can do it this way.
Here.
Okay.
Paying for it twice.
Beautiful.
Cheap here.
All right, Chris will pull that up, but while he does, I just want to say thank you and good to see everybody. I apologize in advance for the tardiness of all of my materials. My family was one of the lucky families that did a COVID cycle in our home this past month, and I missed a number of days of work and got really buried trying to catch up, so I'm sorry that things were so late for this meeting and appreciate your patience with that. And in addition to that, I have updated this presentation since you got it yesterday, based on feedback and questions. We met with the admin team yesterday, and I was able to send this out to some of the board executive committee members who had questions and things that they've been able to email. So it's even more updated. And I'll ask Christine to send out the final updated version to everyone after the meeting so that you have it as well. But I wanted to come tonight and talk about the horizontal alignment work that we're doing with the curriculum. As we've talked about in the past, we have sort of the vertical alignment piece this spring that we've been doing with the curriculum review team, where they've been the PLC groups of teachers from all the schools this year worked on identifying their priority indicators, and the curriculum review team has been giving them feedback, reviewing their work and giving them feedback on that work to try to finalize all of those. And we are just about done. There's just a couple groups who are wrapping up with that work this spring, which is wonderful, because that's where we wanted to get, and we have. And then the work that we're going to talk about for most of the time this evening is about what's next, what happens after this vertical alignment work. So we have kind of identifying those two buckets. Here's our cycle. The dark blue bucket is identifying those indicators, and the light blue bucket is breaking those indicators down into what students are going to know, understand, and be able to do, and learning targets and resources for teachers. And that's the horizontal alignment piece, so that we have more consistency across our schools. So a student in 3rd grade in English Language Arts should be learning the same things and being assessed at the same level as students in any other 3rd grade classroom in English Language Arts in our district, and all the way to up and down the continuum and across the grades. So that's step 2. Just to give you a sample, that link right up there on the top, of what an indicator, what the work we've done this spring is going to look like. I know that was a big part of our conversation, was like, can a parent log on and see what kids are learning? Can a student see what they're learning? You know, how are we going to have that? So there is a sample here. It's almost finished, but it's close enough. You'll get the understanding that the editing is copy editing level, not fundamental level. So if you go to really any of these are fine. You can pick any of them. But what you can see is all of these blue links here go to the math priority indicators for that grade level or course. And so if you click on 2nd grade math, you get the list of priority indicators for 2nd grade math. If you go to high school algebra, you get the list of priority indicators for high school algebra. And they are organized so that they're organized by proficiency area or large group, like the number system, ratios and proportional relationships. And you can see right within there the exact indicators, the priority indicators that the teams have selected as the focus areas for their curriculum. So as we discussed before, there are other standards that they will also be teaching to in these classes, but those standards really are like support, that we call them supporting indicators. They go underneath these big priority standards, and they're like the foundational elements that you need to get to this standard. These are the standards at that higher level of rigor and understanding that is what we want students to be getting to in our classrooms and what we're going to be summatively assessing. So we'll have these available to all our teachers. Our goal is to get them out to them before the end of the school year so that they have the summer to become familiar with the documents, although they help create them, so that really shouldn't be too much work for anybody, but to have them accessible for themselves and in the fall. So we're, again, excited about that, and really looking forward to, we'll get it on the website, and we'll make a website for it and all those other things over the summer so that it's easily accessible for folks. So then moving on, our next step is talking about how we're going to get to that next level of detail that's going to help with the consistency across our schools. So option A is what you saw in your packet that I had sent out earlier, was a summer curriculum week of bringing groups of volunteer teachers from across our schools and grades to get together to collaboratively work on the next phase of this work. We had set a day in the summer and would work with them on unpacking those standards, those indicators, and getting at that learning targets. And I'll give you a couple samples in a minute so you'll get to see exactly what work we have planned and why. But one of the proposals that was also floated to us, and where I changed the presentation for tonight, is that next slide, which talks about option B. And the question was raised, given where we know folks are, our goal to keep the summer stress-free for teachers, and then handing them new curriculum documents that we expect them to follow the day they come back at August in-service, 2 days before school starts. Are we creating more anxiety for folks? Are we going to be able to successfully implement that when they don't have time to familiarize themselves with the materials? Are we going to have enough people over the summer to actually do that work in an authentic and meaningful way? Are we going to get buy-in from the teachers if only a handful of them are part of that process, and then everyone is supposed to follow what this smaller group designs over the summer? So there was this second option added for your consideration tonight, which is extending that process over the next school year, using some in-service day time during some of our in-service days, and also pulling some small groups of cross-SU representatives from across the schools during some school days to try to finish up that curriculum work. The goal would be that we would have completed drafts by early in the spring of '23, so that teachers would have the last couple months of the school year and the summer to familiarize themselves with them and be ready to move forward with them for the following school year.
And could I just say, this would also align with our strategic planning model as well, that we'd be rolling this out at the same time as we'd be rolling out our strategic plan as well.
Yep. The next slide just gives just an overview of the benefits. I know we've had a lot of conversation about that here at this group, of that consistency, deeper understanding of the indicators for teachers, and really having them, by breaking those down with their colleagues and having conversations about exactly what goes into that standard and how you're teaching it and how you're assessing it and the level of depth that you're assessing it by. There'll be some learning, improved rigor for all of our students, alignment with our focus areas for professional development, and better conversations in PLCs, because they're all now working on the same thing. And so they can have those more robust curriculum conversations, where in the past, if you had one program and I had one program and we were doing different things in our school buildings, it was really hard for them to figure out how they were going to collaborate with each other. But now we're all teaching the same standards and at the same level. And so it's clear what we have in common and what we can have those conversations about. The next couple slides just outline some of the connections to our other GRCSU priorities. We're always trying to help people understand that. People feel sometimes like there's so many initiatives, we're doing so many things, and so trying to help people understand how all of these things build upon each other and are interrelated with each other. Act 173, which is, as you know, coming through, requires a coordinated curriculum. And this work absolutely would meet the criteria for how the AOE defines a coordinated curriculum and expectations for teachers. Our focus on universal design for learning and meeting the needs of all students. You really can't figure out how you're going to adjust or personalize an approach to curriculum if you're not super clear on what you're teaching. And the clarity that these documents and the additional work over the summer will provide teachers really helps them to get to that level of, I know exactly what I want to get out of this lesson today, which means that if I have a couple students who need to come at this a different way, when I create a different learning experience for them or a different pathway into the learning for them, I know where they're going. I know very clearly where they need to get to, so I can make better decisions about how I'm going to accommodate and meet their needs in the classroom. The next slide talks about just our connections to literacy. We've been working really hard in our literacy coordinator too, making sure that all of this is aligned with the literacy work going on, and our multi-tiered systems of support, also a significant requirement of Act 173, and that the first layer of MTSS is high quality universal instruction for all students. And so again, this brings us to that common level of rigor and consistency across our GRCSU schools. This final slide, there's some examples. And the first one, I don't think I'm actually going to have you touch that top link, Chris, just I think it is actually more confusing. But it basically takes you into one of those priority documents that we looked at before, where you have the list of all the priority indicators for the course. And then it links to the further breakout of it that we hope to create in our next phase of the curriculum work. But those, that indicator scope link, that second link, that's the sample. That's one of the samples. This page has 4 different samples of exactly what it is that we're trying to create next. And so what you'll see in there is you will see, I should say too, and I should have said this at the beginning, for any board members, if you're trying to navigate these links and open them at home, if you are logged into your GRCSU account, all of these links will open for you. If you're logged in through your personal email and you haven't logged into your GRCSU email account, you might have trouble with some of those links. So just make sure you're logged in when you're looking at trying to get into links in these documents. Or email me or Christine McGinnis and we can get you paper copies of anything that you would like to have. So this is just an example from reading. And the priority indicator here is RL 8.1. That's the standard. And then underneath that you see know, understand, and do. And this is kind of common in educational work you've got a curriculum standard, but your teacher really has to understand what that standard is getting at to be able to teach and assess it well. So this breaks this down for them into what's the knowledge and the concepts and the skills and what performances do students need to reach to be able to show that they have mastered this standard. We further highlighted down below learning targets, which really gets to that very specific level of exactly, and this is in student-friendly language, so I can do this, I can define, I can identify for a learning target. And those are the things that when a teacher is teaching a lesson, they'll say to students, today we are working on X. And that's where they're sharing this learning target with students, they're defining the purpose for the day, helping the kids understand what it is that they're supposed to be learning over the course of their lesson. Those bolded learning targets there, that's the level of rigor for that standard that we are trying to reach for all students. That's where we want to be teaching and assessing that standard. And for ELA and math, we draw that from the SBAC summative blueprints. The Achieve the Core group and the SBAC group got teachers from all over the country together to design their assessments, and they have a blueprint that tells you exactly what's being assessed and exactly what level of rigor students are supposed to be able to do that at. You know, is it a recall level where they're just repeating information, or is it an analysis or an evaluation level where they have to take multiple pieces of text, figure out information from them, and put them together to make a point or an argument with it? So, right, it's a big difference between the level of that kind of information. So this really shows us what the expectations are with the Common Core for where our students should be able to perform. Those little numbers down the side, it says DOK, and then there's those parentheses. DOK refers to Webb's depth of knowledge, which is like, you might be familiar with Bloom's taxonomy if you've heard of that before, and that really talks about what are those different levels of, from recall of information all the way up to synthesis and application and owning that information no matter what the situation is. So that's just a key for that information. And then for literacy and math, if there is an SBAC indicator, an SBAC interim assessment that's available for this indicator, we've linked that information right in here. So with the SBAC assessment, they've created all of these mini assessments called interim assessment blocks, and they're very specific. So you're not giving kids a practice test, you're looking at 4 or 5 questions on fractions that are formatted like the SBAC and have that level of rigor built into the question format in the application. And as a teacher, your class can just log right in. You can do an assessment with them with 5 questions on it, and you can have feedback immediately about whether the way you're assessing their scores matches up with how they would be assessed by somebody else who is teaching the Common Core in another place and trying to get students to that level. So it's a great tool. It's free. It's available for all our teachers, and it's linked right in there so that they have an immediate source of assessment evidence that they could use to see if students are performing. As you keep scrolling down, these are the supporting indicators. So when we said, like, where do the other standards go, this is where they go. They go into the bottom of that document, and they show that these are the standards that support and are kind of underneath that umbrella standard. And so making sure that you're assessing and building student foundational skills in these standards will lead you to success with the larger standard that we've selected as a priority indicator. So teachers are also responsible for teaching and assessing these. They do that at the formative level. So it's information for the teacher on student progress. And then the final big picture assessment of has the student mastered this skill or not is at that priority indicator level, so that we can see if they can put it all together and perform with it. So this is a template. As I said in the PowerPoint presentation, there are 3 others. We just tried to do some different content areas and different grade levels so that both teachers and you guys or whoever wants to look at this could get a sense of what they look like. But it's the same format for all of them. So they'll be consistently formatted, available, ready to go for teachers once we complete this stage of the work. There's just a couple more slides. This is just again, vocabulary, right? Like, it's education vocabulary is always like, what's all the acronyms for, right? We use so many words to say things. So just to define how we are using these terms in GRCSU, the proficiency is like the big picture indicator, like reading informational text. The indicator is that RL 8.1, that standard and the exact learning that students are supposed to do, and then that learning target is the even more broken down in today's lesson, you will learn and master this. So just that there for a reference for you. And then I added a little bit of FAQ just based on some of the questions that I've gotten over the last couple days. How is this work same and different from what we're wrapping up this spring? And again, like this spring, we did that vertical K-12. Do these priority indicators align? Do we feel like there's a logical developmental sequence of skills for kids? Have we chosen and selected the appropriate level of rigor and challenge for our students? And we're pushing ourselves and them to deliver a high quality education. And then this next piece that we want to do is around that horizontal alignment. Are we teaching and assessing the same things at the same level in all of our classrooms across the GRCSU? And that next piece. Do we think we can get enough people together over the summer to complete this work? Great question. If we do go with the summer option, we know many of our teachers are already committed to summer programs, those who are ready and willing to continue to do this work. It's a challenge. So it's a hope and a goal. It's not a guarantee. And if we don't have enough people to volunteer to do this work, then we're going to have to revise the planning if we go with the summer option, and either select specific areas that we're going to work on. Maybe if we get, a bunch of math teachers or a bunch of, arts teachers, like great, then we'll move forward with those areas of the work, and other areas maybe not, or we might have to prioritize and select a couple content areas and try to get that done. It's really hard to predict what the outcome will be. We've had great turnout for the spring curriculum team. It wasn't as many people as we initially planned, but they've all worked really hard and done a great job getting all those priority indicator documents ready to go. So I'm really, and I do hope and think a few of them will continue this work over the summer. All we can do is put it out there. If the board decides that that's what we want to continue to do, and we will make that happen. And then is it expected that we would follow this for the 2022-23 school year? If we do this work over the summer and we have it ready for staff in the fall, that would be an expectation. Again, something we could talk about if people are feeling like the timing or the kind of intensity of this work is not matching correctly with our other priorities right now. We can revisit that too. And then I just did a little bit of like, do we think the timing should be the summer or the school year? Because this is really the question that I was asked to consider. And originally, the board had set this priority. And it was some of you, I think, I don't know, were all of you on the board back then? But, the board had said, like, by next year, this has taken too long. We've been 5 years into this merger process. We need a solid curriculum. People can't still be asking these questions. We need this done. And so that is the timeline and time frame that I have been working under, is pushing this work and advancing that and on goal to meet this deadline. And that is the deadline that the summer work week accomplishes and establishes. But there are some pros and cons to both models. Summer is quicker progress toward consistency across our schools, and it meets the board deadline. There are less teachers involved in the process, which means potentially less buy-in, less people involved in the professional learning that happens while the teachers have these conversations and do this work, potentially less expertise, and not having teachers from as many grade levels or content areas, or only having 1 or 2 teachers in an area instead of having 4 to 8 in an area. The board has talked about trying to give teachers a chance to recharge over the summer, and has even forgiven school days at the end of the year in that effort. So this would not accomplish that. And we know that giving teachers access to new curriculum documents days before school begins is also not ideal. Like, that's not, they need time to digest this and to understand this before they're going to fully implement it. But again, what expectations we set for them, we are in control of with our admin team in terms of, do we expect this on day 1 of school? If you got it 2 days before, like, we can adjust expectations too. Smaller groups of people over the summer means more hands-on support from myself, from the principals, from anybody who's involved in this. It's a lot easier for us to work very closely. When you get to affinity groups and we have 25 groups meeting at the same time on the same day, it's very hard to provide all of them with support. You literally physically can't be at all of those meetings. And you see at the bottom side, if we do it in the school year, it would mean more groups would have to meet and self-facilitate their own meetings and figure out processes by themselves. That can be harder, and it can slow things down, or if people aren't clear on what they're supposed to do, can lead to missteps and misstarts. Moving into the school year extends our process by an additional year. There could be more teachers involved in the process. We could pull people and groups of people from schools and make sure we have representatives from everyone, which would be a really nice piece for that continued unification for GRCSU. And more people involved in the process means they're going to understand it more deeply. You could potentially have more expertise there. But it then removes teachers from the classroom and or from other professional development opportunities to do this work instead of that. So there's a trade-off with that time, and allows for more inclusive representation across our GRCSU schools. I'm sure there are others, but that's kind of the quick pros and cons list that I came up with today. Just wanted to put that back out there to you all for, you know, what you're thinking, what your thoughts and responses to this are, and what you think about the pacing and timing proceeding as originally planned, or taking a different, potentially more inclusive approach. Thanks for doing that, Chris.
Questions, thoughts, comments?
Kristen Ross is there hand up as well.
Oh, Kristen?
Hi, Lisa, I just had a question about the last slide that you just showed with the trade-offs for summer versus school year timing of working on this, getting the work done. So if those who are available and willing to work in the summer, like kind of went with the summer option, is there any flexibility, or I guess maybe that might be up to the board, but in terms of when implementation would happen? So so I'm actually going through a similar process by force at working for the Vermont State College System right now, and we have to do a lot of work over the summer that is not part of our contracts, etc. So, but we're not actually really implementing it fully until fall 2023, technically. So, but we still have to start this summer. So I'm just wondering if people were willing, you know, given the trade-offs, to work on it this summer. But like you said, giving teachers a week of lead time to implement something is not ideal. Is there any flexibility of when implementation could actually begin? Would it have to be this fall if the summer work was done and completed as you might hope it would be?
No, there's definitely flexibility there because the groups have already identified their priority indicators. You know, that was really the first key work. So there's already going to be wins with this. There's already going to be more calibration and more consistency across the SU just from doing that process. And that's completed, done, ready to go. And that will also go into jump rope in the fall. So everyone, when they come in, will have priority indicators in there to be assessed at the summative level and supporting indicators in there to be assessed at the formative level. All the groups know what they are. They're ready to go with that. And so they'll be assessing at those levels. They just won't have basically the resource or support to be really consistent in how they're assessing. So it's still a win, even if we took multiple, more time, several months of training or whatever, or a whole school year, we could have definitely flexibility around that.
And I ask that because, again, I have different, I'm still teaching adults, but when I'm in the middle of teaching my courses, it is difficult to also be doing other kinds of, overarching big picture work, right? And I just feel like our students have missed their teachers a lot over the last 3 years and being in a classroom. Even this year, a lot of teachers and other staff have had to be out either because of illness or whatever. And my sway right now is to limit the amount that teachers would be out of their own classrooms during the school year as much as we can. I mean, obviously other professional development needs to happen, etc. But it just seems like if this will be an added thing that will take them out of the classroom, I'm a little concerned about that. Although again, this has to get done in some way. So I'm also weighing the trade-offs. But I just wondered if there's some flexibility of when, like if summer work happens, do we have to slam boom get it implemented right away first week in the fall? Like, is there a way to sort of swing that out a little bit? So
Well, I had a question about the priority indicators. Do those, can those change at all? I mean, that's just the standard, right?
Sure. I think our goal really is to, we're always looking at these things, right? So our goal is to have this set, it's gonna move forward into next year, everybody's agreed on it, everybody's trying to teach to it, assess to it, and make it work. And then we're gonna look at the student data. And did this meet our student needs? Did they get where we want them to go? You know, have they met the standards that we wanted them to meet? Do we have other measures besides just curriculum-based measures that correlate and that say that we're on the right track with this work? And if there are adjustments to make, then we would do those. You know, we'd have our PLC groups and our teacher teams meet to go back through and look at what they had selected and whether or not it was being effective and make adjustments that we would then change for the following year. So yeah, absolutely. And we should, I mean, always we should be looking at what we're doing every year and was it effective? Did it meet student needs? Have our kids learn what we wanted them to learn? And if not, what are we gonna change to make that happen better next year?
And is there like for those students who maybe are above the standard proficiency, is there like another set for those who, I guess, for proficiency case?
So when our teachers do a good job of meeting the needs of all students, what you see is that these priority indicators are at the proficient level. So if you're thinking about beginning, approaching, proficient, or advanced, these indicators are at the proficient level. We're saying all kids have mastered the standard, they are proficient if they're at this level. So the teacher's job then is to create opportunities for students to prove that they are advanced in that area and that they can do, you know, more with that content or more with that skill and can demonstrate that within the content of our class. I think we still have a lot to do there, and a lot of work to help in supporting our teachers in figuring out what that looks like in their classrooms. But the system allows for that completely.
All right, that kind of answers that question. And then in terms of the goals, I guess you know, at our last meeting we talked about this, and it was you wanted this work completed by the summer or by the time school starts, and is that if you know, with having the, I guess, scenario where you don't have the staff to do it, aren't there stipends that we had approved for that? Is that included, like still not having enough people to fill, our staff to fill in that?
Yeah. So everyone who does this would be paid. We have there's a curriculum work rate in the CBA, so they'd be paid an hourly rate according to that curriculum work. And once we got the group of people together that were going to complete this work, we would send through contracts like we normally do for additional work or additional stipends to the board.
Okay. All right. So I guess I would ask. I mean, what would your recommendation be?
I serve at the pleasure of the board.
Okay.
Yeah, there are pros and cons of each, you know, of each of these things, and I could support either way. Either way moves forward for our kids, and that's what we want to do. It's just how fast do we want to go, at what cost, I guess is really the question. Like when you weigh out all of those pieces, what's the return on the investment for both things? We're going to get there either way, and we're gonna, you know, and we're moving forward either way. So it's just how aggressively and fast do we want to push people, and how top down do we want to be, versus how inclusive do we want to be, and that's part of becoming GRCSU, right? And like trying to merge all of these different schools and all of these different systems and all of these different historical practices together. A lot of all the decisions we made since Act 46 have been that balance of, you know, when we just have to do something and it's coming top down and we're doing it, and when we have time to bring people together to have really authentic, meaningful conversations that take a little bit more time, but hopefully help people be more engaged in the process. So I support both for different reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
Who would assist with the implementation of the curriculum in the buildings? Is that going to be coaches?
Coaches certainly, but the primary role will be principals. They're the ones who will be going in and working with teachers in the supervision and evaluation process. They're doing walkthroughs. They're working with the teachers on common formative assessments, other curriculum work in their buildings. So they would have the primary role in monitoring and supporting implementation of this work. And then, obviously, all the rest of our support systems like coaches and professional development and in-service time and me and Chris and, our team would be kind of secondary supports to do the big picture, structure stuff for that, and to support the principals.
So it sounds to me that you have the skeleton of what you want already. So if we spent some time with whoever's available to start filling in the organs and the skin and try to, make this body, and then in the fall, instead of implementing it right away, have it available, have the teachers kind of feel it out, learn about it, and, if there needs to be some adjustments, like you said, once you have data, you'll get adjustments, but I think once you present it, you might have adjustments.
Yep.
And by working through it when a lot of the grunt work's already done over the summer as best as we can, and just finessing it over next year with the idea that if the teachers want to start looking at it and start trying some of it on their own and see what's working, what's, what needs a little assistance, and then with the goal of everybody doing it the following year, I feel like is a good way to compromise.
Lynette?
No. We've been finessing and doing this for too many years. We have at least 4 years of kids that have graduated. We need to, as far as I'm concerned, if we have the bodies, to get it done and get it started, implemented, and let them start using it, getting used to it. The kids are still getting it. I know it's not going to be perfect. None of these ever are when they first start. Excuse me. But we can't afford to play with it. And, well, when the teachers get ready, no, it's move it on.
Thanks. Anybody else have any comments, questions, thoughts? I see we have a teacher with us. Any thoughts, April, that you'd like to share, hearing the discussion?
April's eating dinner.
Okay. So the choice, Amanda?
Lisa, I was just wondering, Lisa Madison, if you feel like it's necessary for us to to be assistance at all with any of this process to help kind of put pieces together and move things along. Do you feel any benefit to us looking at that?
Amanda, I'm sorry, you're cutting in and out, and I don't know if I really understand what you said.
I'm sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I was just wondering if you felt like there was any benefit to us looking at restarting the curriculum committee on an SU level to be of any assistance during this process to kind of move things in to give all of us a better understanding and put more heads together. And do you feel like there's any benefit to us looking at creating that committee again, or do you feel like that's not a helpful step?
That's a great question. And you've heard me go back and forth on my answer to that, I think. Again, I go to this unification piece, and I think that we're having a conversation about the logistics of a project, but really we're also having a conversation about our values and our common goals as a supervisory union across all of the districts. And I think there's still value in that too. And again, us figuring out who is GRCSU and what are our priorities and how do we want to go about conducting business. So I think there's benefit to people having deep understanding. I sort of feel like if I had come to a curriculum committee and we'd had the same conversation and talked about this, that we still would have ended up wanting to present it to the full board and get responses and feedback from everyone. So I don't know if it's actually going to be help with efficiency of the process at this point in time, but I don't know. Yeah. That's I don't know if you have an opinion about it.
Tim?
6 and 1/2 doesn't have another.
Hello. So, Lisa Madison here. I guess my question is, when you say that both options are good options, is there a hybrid option that is the best option? I mean, I get, like, Lynette spoke to, and, I mean, I echo her sentiment in terms of, like, we've been talking about this for a number of years, but it's kind of like when you're running late to an appointment and you decide you want to speed at the very last 5 minutes, right? And then you end up with a ticket. So I sort of, I want to know that the product that we deliver at the end of this is good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, I think, Tim, what some of the board members tonight have proposed, that doing the work as planned, but slowing the pace of the implementation, I think that is the middle ground hybrid option. Of it allows, as Tina said, it allows the teachers to move who are ready to move and to get into this process, and allows us to support that and try to advance that work, as quickly as we can. But it doesn't create a instant requirement with a brand new product, the first day of school in a kind of high pressure, high stress situation for people. So I think that proposal seems to be in the middle from what I've heard tonight.
Mike?
I'm not sure I agree with the with the implementation that the teachers have to come up to speed. I think they're our employees, and if we set the standard that it's implementing in the beginning of the school year, you're sort of implementing a measuring stick. I don't think we should change the measuring stick partway through the process, which is the school year. I think that as the board, that it's our responsibility to kind of drive this. I don't see a reason to wait. I see that this is part of your job to learn what we're going to be doing in the fall and what's expected of you. And this is what we're going to do.
Thanks.
So what is the pleasure of the board? So a motion will be required so that we can give Lisa direction as to what the expectation is of this board. So we have option A, which is to do the work over the summer with the hope that we have instructors across the GRCSU that will participate. We have option B, that we don't have help over the summer, so we move it until fall, PD, etc. during the fall semester, and have it prepared to come out with the strategic plan March. Or we now have option C, which is do the work over the summer, provide it to the instructors, but allow them time to absorb it for implementation. That's my assessment of C. I don't know. I could just be making it all up.
That was a good summary.
I also think that we'll know more at the end of next month at our meeting about whether or not you got volunteers
Not
too.
enough people.
Because I think that that's part of it. I think ideally all of us would like this to go forward as best we can and just support teachers as best we can in the fall.
Can we make this decision at the next meeting?
Make a motion.
You want to table making a decision until she puts it out to teachers?
Or make the motion to at least start the process for the summer, and we'll follow up.
Well, I mean, if you want, I would go with option A, but I'm trying to give you a little leeway by saying I'll give you a month to find out if we have teachers. I mean, like I said, and Lisa knows that we're just, gotta get it out there. We can't wait until everybody feels like doing it. Some of them will never feel like doing it, and we most certainly can't wait another year.
So we could table it until the June meeting to see how many teachers sign up, because it hasn't been put out to teachers
Right.
yet.
I think as long as you're not going to choose option B, we could do that. I don't want to invite teachers to do something and then go back to them and say, just kidding, we changed our minds. Like,
No, I think that's why we wait.
Right, if we're gonna do A or C, we can wait until the next meeting to say which one we wanna do. But if we're gonna do, if there's any chance we're gonna do B, I think we need to decide that before
we
I
can
recruit
ask that now.
teachers for the work.
What, how many people, well,
One.
I mean, I think if we're gonna table it until the next meeting, then the expectation of the board would be we're doing A or C. Because we're putting it out to teachers to see if they're going to come forward. But I think there also has to be an understanding, like, what are we saying the number of teachers are that's acceptable? I mean, are we saying if 5 elementary school teachers come forward, are we saying that that's the workforce along with coaches that's going to do the work? I think that has to have some level of clarity also, so,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, we,
whatever the board would like to do.
I think when you find out who is available, we can figure out exactly next time, but as long as nobody else wanted B, or the majority of the board doesn't want B. I think we all want A or C.
I'm going back to what I said before. I think you have to say, this is what we're going to do. And they have to get online with it. If you say, maybe this is what we're gonna do, or when you feel like this is what we're gonna do, then get online with it. I think that's not a good way to run things.
Well, I also think part of the problem is that a lot of these teachers aren't working over the summer.
It's part of the getting ready for next year. It's part of
we
what they
gotta
do.
do what's best for the students.
Right, Mike, I understand. I think the issue is getting over the summer. If we had this ready for them in, say, June or July, the fact that they may not be receiving this until a week before the start of school, that's a little bit different in terms of prep. So teachers traditionally, you're right, have that summer, like, they'll know their assignments, they'll know who what classes, of course, they'll be teaching when they leave on the 17th. But I think one of the issues, I think you laid it out in the cons, is as we delay this, that they may not see these documents until a week before the start of school, and that is very difficult for a teacher at that time to, if they've been planning all summer long, then to quickly kind of turn the corner. I think that, so when we look at, the idea of, I'm a very, north person who I just want to get there and let's go. Like I said, this drives me nuts sometimes, but I also want to make sure that and I think Tim had a nice analogy there. I'm the guy that probably have a ton of speeding tickets, stacked up, and, I'd be broke because, but I think we have to look at it in terms of how we're going to get to that point. And I think another thing we have to consider as well is we may have a group of teachers that we may have, like, say, math and, science and art, maybe we have that covered, but we don't have anyone for certain disciplines. And so do we move forward in those areas, and then do we look at, the other areas working during the course of the year, and, or do we just delay? I mean, I think that's because we at this point don't know who is going to sign up for the summer, and this is, I've been, next year, my 29th year, I've done this in every single place I worked at. Summer curriculum work, it's hit or miss. You are going to get some people who get excited about it, would do it for free. Other people, you could, just give them a blank check and they would say, nope, that would nothing to do with it. That's just how it is. So it really, and I think, this is a unique summer where I think a lot of our staff are looking to just take the time off and just get away from school as they should. So we may find that we have this inequity in terms of representation. And so therefore, I think that's something for us to discuss the next meeting as well, is do we move forward with those groups, and those groups aren't represented? Do we want the coaches to provide this, or continue working in absentia of, other, teachers there to provide this document for them to respond to, move it into the fall? I mean, I think those are discussions that's.
They're all good discussions,
Yeah.
but from my experience, when we have option A, we're gonna start this at the beginning of school, or we have option C, well, we're gonna kind of ease our way into it. Maybe we won't really get into it until next year. I guarantee you will not have the teachers that you need show up. Teachers know that come the first part of the year, they're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have more interest, at least of let us get in there and get our say in, learn it a little bit. And the second part is, perhaps, and I realize that you too also need a break this summer, vacation. People tend to forget that. But can we have towards the end of summer, a week of learning this? We did this work, it's set to go, we're hoping to, start right off. The ones that do not know what it is or whatever, instead of getting it 2 days ahead, perhaps you'd like to come in for this week or whatever and learn it.
I mean, that would be something, but the board would have to decide if we wanted to make that an optional event for teachers and pay them to come in.
Or we could do something and make it virtual and share it out with them about different. what
Right, but
that
either
is.
way, it said contractually that they don't work for us during the summer and we
That's
can't
true.
Right,
force them to
and I
attend
understand
and-
that.
No,
Right.
they don't have to open their email.
Right.
My concern is that we have such a small group come in the summer, if we say we're not gonna implement it till later, that you end up doing the work again in the fall.
Yep.
So we're paying for the same thing twice. So while you're the north person who wants to get there, I'm the cheap person who wants the product, but I don't wanna pay for it twice. And that's a concern. And I'm also concerned about giving it to them 2 days. I think that, we're working hard to have good relationships with our teachers. And I don't know if I was a teacher, how well I would receive having it handed to me 2 days before I walk into my classroom.
No, and that's why I say I think we give them that chance before
Right.
to be able to attend something.
Mm-hmm.
Paying is, you're gonna pay one way or the other,
Yeah,
whether we're paying coaches to catch them all up or whatever. At least that way they have a chance, once they've had the beginning of the summer, most of the summer off, to get up to date. I mean, I do not want to postpone this, as you know, Lisa, another year, because it's just rolling together.
what is the optimum number of teachers we're looking for summer curriculum work?
Yeah, I should have sat down and really.
Just a ballpark. I mean, are we thinking like if we could have, this is, a dream, 3 per grade level, something like that. So you're kind of more across the SU, like,
Yeah, you need a good group. When you really start to think about each grade level at the elementary level has 4 content areas. So that's a lot of indicators for people to go through. So we'd talked about potentially grouping them like K2 English, K2 Math, K2 Science, K2 Social Studies, and having those groups work on different collections of it, and it would be the same for 3 through 6. So, and then when you get to the high school level, you need representatives for every department. So you need, art, music, science, civics, all the way through. So, yeah,
this
you're
is-
looking
this
at,
is
you're
a
looking
week.
at a good size group.
yeah,
20 to
It's
25.
for 1 week, right?
Yep.
1 week.
For 1 week. Yeah, and we did it 1 week, planned it for 1 week because we felt like it was less of a commitment for
Right.
people.
Yep.
And that they didn't have to come every Monday for the entire summer, right? They
Right.
could come, do this kind of intense work, and then go take the rest of the summer off and relax and enjoy themselves. That was also part of our thing.
So I think we should table it to the next meeting with the intent of the board being that we want to do the work over the summer. And it sounds like, I'm gonna just go out on a limb, the majority are thinking implementation within the same year.
Right.
But I think we could go forward, table it to see who signs up until the next meeting. But with the intent of the board being doing the work over the summer and staying on the same path, that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yep. You're not gonna win a race if you're already thinking about what you're gonna do when you lose. Let's get it done.
Consensus.
If we hit bumps and something happens, then we deal with it, but.
It's like every project we implement, right?
Exactly.
It's like, here's our plan. The plan may not work the way
Right.
we intended, but
Right,
that's
but-
the plan up front. Right.
But your plan should be your number 1A, your A game.
So does that sound like a game plan to people, or people want to pick something? Okay.
Yep.
I think
That
that's,
sounds good, Lisa. How we're doing it at the college level is the board of trustees is like, you have to do this by the fall, and they're just letting each department figure out when they're gonna do it, right? So I have 2 dates this summer. I have to do it, and I won't get paid at all, 0. So, cause I don't start till, my contract doesn't start till August,
give 'em-
so, but I wanna plan, cause I'm an educator, and it's gonna benefit the students, and so.
Thank you.
I think most teachers are gonna be like, okay, maybe I don't wanna spend my summer this way, but, I think most teachers across our district see that there's differences and see that there's problems with curriculum alignment, and
Do too.
I'm hoping that they would want to buy into this. I know it's gonna be difficult, but anyway, so I think that's fine if we table it and with the intent that we move as quickly as possible, assuming we get enough folks.
Has there been a motion to table?
There has not been a motion. So motion by Mike to table the summer work,
Horizontal curriculum work.
okay. Following, okay, and follow the same path forward that we're currently on
To the next meeting. in June.
until the June meeting.
Correct.
I'm
Any
sure
discussion?
Shauna can get that off.
She can rewatch the tape.
Clear as mud. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Great,
Motion
thank you.
passes unanimously. All right.
Gives me lots of feedback and direction for our next steps, so appreciate your time.
And yeah, so we hope teachers will sign up. All right, moving on to personnel. We have contract recommendations, professional staff. We have Melissa Miller, Angela Hayes, Regina Sharon, and Katie Loomis. Any questions about the new hires for professional staff?
Yeah, I had a question, just to clarify, the leave of absence.
Because she currently works for us, so we'll take that up after. She wants to hold her position for a year while she moves to, this was the student support service position that we talked about where we hired Bill and we were gonna put two underneath him. And she originally didn't want, and there were some changes within her family. And so she's coming back, but she wants to take a leave of absence from her current position in the event that, for whatever reason, maybe this position doesn't work out. It's kind of like when we let the coaches take a leave of absence.
It is in the master agreement that a teacher can request
Yeah.
a one-year leave of absence, and I think the positive for a staff member is by doing this, that particularly if a position is grant funded, gives them a little stability that if something would happen to the position over the course of next year, the position would go away, that they do have the security of they can, come back to being a special educator. Now, obviously, we look at our special educators, we're in dire need, so there's still
Yeah.
probably be a need next year as well, but this also, with regard to seniority and other things, would hold those places for her, so.
I was gonna say, are we gonna be able to fill it for a year? Find someone? When we
That's
haven't
not
been
the
able
only
to?
special educator position we have.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, does that add to the problem?
I think, once you get to a certain point.
It's just one more.
It's right. I think once you get to a certain threshold, then you're looking at a as opposed to an independent solution, you're looking more towards like a group solution. I think Lisa and I had a conversation with Bill Basic, the new director of student sports, about this, and I know Christine, Cam, and Kim have been doing everything they can to recruit and find individuals. But so we're building out some contingency plans, and I know Christine, I know you're on. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that if you want? I'm trying to put you on the spot, but.
No, I mean, right, we're short-staffed, people are moving out of special ed positions into gen ed positions. It's creating, it's like, even every time I feel like I get one person on, we moved another person out, so, we're not gaining. And, it is gonna be a concern next year. But, it's a concern on all levels, I know.
And there's a concern across the state. We're seeing this trend. Talking with other superintendents, they're having the same issues and problems with just losing special educators. We can't recruit them or we can't find them.
When you do find someone, Christine, how do you choose which school they go in?
Right now, I honestly am not guaranteeing anyone where they will be at this point because we're gonna have to look at, unless I know there's no one, that we we have to, but I'm not adding, in this essence, extra staff to somewhere until we've got a minimal coverage in other buildings. So,
I don't know, it's
Yeah.
just, the problem is huge. We have more than that because
Yep.
in Rutland Town, as you know, because we have a political problem going on also.
yeah, but I mean, like, you know,
But
we
it
have some,
becomes-
you know,
but it comes
the
to a
school now that
point-
had 3 special educators, and that's, you know, not giving them any extra, at all, but right now, I just put 1 there, cause there were 0 before. So, the last person that we hired will be at that school, because there's no one. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. I think we're gonna continue to look. Sometimes you get lucky over the summer and people move into the area and we get some applicants, but, you know, I think Bill's gonna have to look at all of the numbers of students in each building and kind of make it as equitable as it can be.
Now, I realize right now, each school, well, you do the hiring, advertising.
Yeah.
What is prohibiting these schools from going out and trying to find their own?
Because they have to be SU employees.
But if they
and
find-
Because I think if we're hiring at the SU level and then we hire someone, and if I guarantee them and say you'll be at this school, but then we find out we have no one at another school, we would have to shift them. And I don't wanna give people false guarantees of which school they're gonna work in.
Right, but I don't want to get up against the wall where you're actually looking at leaving a supervisory union in order to fulfill and get the resources you need for your students. But that's a discussion for another time. Thank you.
So she's taken a year leave of absence, and then next year she's gonna be in this position.
So she's,
And-
similar to what other staff members have done in the past, where, you know, particularly around grant-funded positions, where she's requesting a 1-year leave of absence. It does not necessarily mean that's, I think it's more just in terms of just to see if this job will be in existence after this, you know, first year, second year. So I think that's, and if for some reason, like I said, it's grant-funded, and it just is grant-funded, funding could go away at any particular time, or, you know, decision made, so they're, you know, so those teachers, as part of the master agreement, look at, you know, there's a security net that they can put in place where this person then could move back right into their special educator position.
That makes sense. That puts it in perspective. And I guess if, for Christine, if next year, if we still have a significant vacancy, could the coordinator of student service step in as a special educator if needed?
So I think that, well, I think as we have certain issues, I think we're gonna have to look at all solutions and all resources, so, yeah.
I mean, I case manage several children now and write IEPs, just because even now we've got shortage kids that are at other programs. I'm not pulling I'm doing that myself, yeah. I oversee several students and do their IEPs and meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to support staff new hires. Dolores Levac and Karen Brown, and support staff CBA contracts for FY '23, Karen Brown and Heidi Brothers. I'm guessing it's 2 different Karen Browns.
One's for next year and one's for this year. I think that's next year's salary. It's
Oh,
different.
so we're hiring her, but next year it's under,
So I think the issue with this, what Debbie was saying is, the contract was issued, but it was kind of in that limbo of the agreement, so.
Okay.
So it's reflecting this year's, but then you're only approving, the FY '23 is what would be approving, that'd be the newest one.
Okay.
So I guess it came before the board on FY '22, and so she's trying to show FY '23, if that makes sense.
okay, gotcha. All right. A motion would be in order to approve professional staff new hires, support staff new hires, support staff CBA new hires.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Tina. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We also have resignations. Wendy
Fahan.
Fahan, Alyssa Hutchins, I butcher people's names, Abby Bennett, Amy Torrey, Todd Montana. Retirements, Alicia Westoff, Elizabeth Bissell. Terminations, Heather McGee and Rebecca Brinker Guerrero. And then we have the leave of absence for Katie Loomis. So a motion would be in order.
Make a motion.
Any discussion?
Oh, wasn't the leave request separate?
Well, we can do it under
Okay.
all of this. We added that to the agenda, but. All right, hearing none, all those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So you have in your packet all the vacancies throughout the GRCSU. And now we'll find Lewis on the bus.
Hi, let me know if you have any trouble hearing me. So I have a few items tonight. We'll start with food service first. So there was a report in the packet that outlines all of my items for tonight. And then there was also some supporting documentation. So the first one is the food service contract renewal. So we currently use Aladdin. They've changed the name to Aladdin. Also, they also go by Lexington. We use them for Rutland Town and Quarry Valley, and we have to renew the contract every year. We can renew it for up to 4 years, and then we have to go back out to bid. So next year is our last year that we can renew it for. So we will start the bid process next year to determine who we'll be using for FY24. So I provided some information in my board report. We're currently doing pretty well this year as far as food service goes. As you know, everyone's eating for free. We're estimated to end the year with a surplus in the food service account of approximately $100,000. And that is due to the higher rates and the participation that we're seeing. The higher rates are for the food service program because of it, everyone eats for free. So the federal government is paying higher rates. And because it's free, participation is up as well. We are also sitting currently on a surplus from last year of $57,000. So we should, at the end of this year, see a pretty nice surplus sitting there of about $157,000 or more. So that surplus has to stay in food service and used to either offset any deficits we may have in the future or to better the program in some way, whether it's buying equipment or supplies for the program, or increasing the quality or whatever we can. So I do recommend that we do renew for 1 more year. At this point in time, we really don't have a lot of options because the bid process takes a long time. But we've been with Aladdin for quite a while, and I think all things considered, they do a pretty good job for our food service and our students. The rates are also provided in the packet for next year. Due to inflation this year, we are seeing pretty high increase in CPI. So the rates are up 6.8%.
Decrease that by a penny to keep it even.
Yeah.
So a motion would be in order to renew for 1 year.
Did Mike make the motion?
No, he wants to have discussion, but we need the motion.
I'll make the motion.
All right.
For the year.
Tina makes the motion to renew for 1 year. Discussion.
I have a question for Lewis. On the proposed lunch school year and summer, you say $3.94, and you also say adult a la carte $3.94, and you say a snack is at $1.06. Wouldn't it make it just simpler if we make the two $3.94s $3.95 and reduce the snack to $1.05 just to even the numbers out?
I do hear Mike, I do like nice round numbers. However, they're not allowed to increase above the CPI. It would be against the state
Okay.
regulations.
All right.
So going to 395 would be above that CPI.
Just trying to eliminate the penny requirement. Keep it at a nickel instead of a penny.
We do serve a lot more lunches, and so that increase of that penny would have an impact,
Yeah.
as opposed to the amount of snacks that we're offering.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other discussion?
I wanted to thank Aladdin for working with us and trying to help to improve things at Rutland Town. It's still not perfect. I think part of that is just finding staff to work in the kitchen. It's not easy for them to find them, just like we are having trouble with custodians and other staff. But they did send a survey around, and they, although the results may not have been super positive all around, they did try to make some improvements, and I feel like they're doing the best that they can with what they've got. So I wanted to thank them for being reactive and helpful.
Great. Any other discussion, comments? All right, all those in favor to renew the contract with Aladdin for 1 year?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, next item, student and meal prices. So student prices will be free for next year. That was approved by in this legislative session. We're not sure on exactly how that's going to work as far as what the rates are going to be. And then the meal prices, I'll have to come back at a later meeting to set those, because we're still waiting on some information from the state on target prices. They set a minimum each year as to what we have to charge, and we don't have that information yet. So I'll come back to you at a different meeting on that. The next item is
Louis,
the
could I ask-
Grcsu bid threshold.
Louis, one sec.
Could I ask you one question? Is
Okay.
this, okay, the free lunches again, or free meals, is that, one of the many unfunded mandates that they made this year?
It is funded for FY '23. They're using, some of that surplus that was sitting in the ed fund. It's estimated to cost $29 million. Of that, I think it was 95 million sitting in the ed fund completely. 29 of that's going towards the free meals. A bunch of it went towards lowering, taxes with the increase of the yield. And then there was also the PCB money that they set aside.
Thank you.
No decision has been made for FY '24, as far as I'm aware. I believe that's still in discussions.
Thank you.
So the next item, the bid threshold. So last year, the state increased their bid threshold from 15,000 to 40,000. And we kept doing business as usual and kept it at the $15,000 for our local procedures, just because we wanted to ensure that we were being as competitive as possible. With the increases in inflation, and I mean, $15,000 is a pretty small project these days. And with the state increasing that to 40,000, I'm recommending that we now increase our bid threshold to 40,000. That does not mean we will stop looking for competitive bids and doing our best to find the best price. But the official bid process would start at that 40,000, where we would actually advertise it and get those bids and bring that to the board for approval. It also allows us to adjust our micro purchase through federal grants, which gives us more flexibility and cuts down on the administrative burden on spending that grant money.
I'll make a motion to,
Okay, motion by Lynette to increase the bid threshold from 15,000 to 40,000. Any discussion?
Yeah, the bylaws already reflect that. It already references statute, and that already reflects the 40,000. I don't even think we need to do anything.
It is correct, the bylaws do reflect that, but I just wanted to make all the boards aware, and whether you want to do a motion or not. I know we've still been using the 15,000.
Correct.
As that threshold, and I just didn't want to make that shift, even though the state did. I didn't want to make that shift with our issue until we had that discussion with the board.
You know, I think it's already there.
Well,
It-
most bylaws say may, doesn't say must, so it's always better to reaffirm. So my motion's gonna stay on the floor.
So a motion by Lynette to increase the bid threshold from 15,000 to 40,000. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Actually, I was,
Okay.
if I could finish without being interrupted. It
me.
says procedures, Lewis, in here. What procedures are you referencing?
Just our internal procedures.
Just the
as
internal
far as
procedures?
What I tell the board, what I tell the administrators and staff when they're looking at progress.
Okay.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No?
Same man, speak up.
Motion passes by majority.
Okay, so the last item I have for you tonight in regular session is the IRA assessment on my board report. This is an item that I discussed with the board chairs a few months ago. So currently IRA is running a deficit of approximately $30,000. And this is due to extra students moving in after their budget was set. Unfortunately, IRA has no way to offset any deficits, just with the hope that either students, I don't want to say it that way, but students move out, in and out. That's the only thing that they have to offset their budget. So what I had brought forward to the board chairs was that we are seeing a big increase in grant indirect funds that we're earning from the federal, the CRF grants and the ESSER grants. That money can be spent however we choose. It's to cover administrative costs at the SU. We are running a surplus at the SU because of those indirects. So my suggestion, because IRA cannot benefit directly from the ESSER grants because they're not running a school, was to allow them to end in the black by offsetting their deficit, by reducing their general fund assessment, using those grant and direct funds for this year and this year only.
Now that's liable to change, because we still got a month left, correct?
Correct, these are just estimates that I don't anticipate the deficit increasing. I mean, materially at least, this is a pretty good estimate.
I'll make a motion to allow it.
So motion to, reduce IRA's general fund assessment of approximately $30,000 by use of ESSER or, other funds and SU surplus.
Is that 35 instead of 30, Louis?
Let me just.
It was
so-
34 at one time.
Right.
There it says
When
approximately
we
35.
first discussed it, it was actually a lot higher. It
Yeah.
was almost it was in the 50s.
Right.
It's come down. So right now, and as the last month, it was approximately 35,000.
Okay.
Okay.
And I mean, I realize we're not just gonna give them 35 and then find out it was 30, but,
Right, it's to cover, so we could just say, the motion is to cover the deficit, IRA's deficit in the general fund assessment by using ESSER and SU surplus funds for this year only.
yep, that's what I said.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I think it was 50, but we'll take 35.
We'll take what we give you.
And like,
Well, I guess I'm gonna go with Lewis's numbers.
right. Let's see.
Yeah.
The guy who writes the check.
Eric?
Louis, will this affect local district, surplus assessments at all?
Not directly, so, I mean, anything obviously that you give up to offset IRA is going to be less of a surplus that we have, or potentially have, and therefore decrease the amount of refund that you get in future years. But it's not going to offset, it's not going to affect any of the numbers you've already seen at your local levels. And we can still end with a surplus at the SU. And as I discussed at the last month meeting, we still have $100,000 in indirects that we haven't taken yet from ESSER 2, which we were gonna push into next year. So at any point we have funds available to use for this, it's only gonna lower the amount of refund that you get,
Okay.
but nothing that you've already planned on.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out if, like, there was a $15,000 surplus that, assessment for Wells Springs, if we did this, we wouldn't be getting that assessment, right? That wouldn't show up.
Well, Wells Springs surplus for their financials won't change. The only thing that's gonna change is the SU.
Right.
So if the SU ends with a $50,000 surplus, that would be refunded to all the districts based on your allocations. So if Wells Springs, let's say, just use round numbers, was 20%, and so you would normally get a $10,000 refund off a $50,000 surplus. If we're going to decrease that amount of surplus, your 20% is going to be reduced.
So the 30,000 is gonna come out of the surplus, and then whatever your percentage is gonna come from the surplus. So everyone's paying the same amount, essentially. Or we can also use ESSER funds, you said as well, because, IRA doesn't benefit.
We're using ESSER indirect funds, we're
Yeah.
not using the actual ESSER grant.
Right. Okay,
I guess I was just hoping to find out if, there was gonna be a significant impact, like financially, how much that would be,
So for Wells Springs, 35,000 is about $5,000 in surplus, so, we estimate that we were gonna end with a surplus over $50,000 at the last meeting. We can still keep that surplus of $50,000 by just pulling more indirects from the grant, or we can just lower that surplus to approximately $20,000. That's a decision we can make at the next board meeting, before I pull those indirect funds at the end of the year.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Do you have any?
That's all I have for now.
Okay. Moving on to old business, bylaws. Do you want to go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So, I guess, I think that, we should, at least bring up and decide how we want to handle bylaws going forward. Honestly, do they need change? Do they need, and I think, as a board, it's been, 4 years since the merger, maybe it might be good to go through and review them and make sure they're being followed and all the above, I guess.
So would that be worthy of something for the SU retreat?
Yeah, that would be actually. And, I would imagine that, there's a lot here. I would say that there's quite a bit of discussion in some of this stuff, and I even see a lot of sections in here that probably could use updating, and so I think it would be good. And you know, I was going to suggest too, if not, you know, some sort of I believe there was a committee pre-merger
go.
too that did work on bylaws, but I don't know much about that.
Lynette?
If you could form, as chairman, if you could form a committee to look at that, it's not something I think we should bring into the retreat raw.
Okay,
Because that would take us all night just on that one item.
okay. So I will put a committee together for bylaws. Is there anyone that has interest in the bylaw committee?
I'll be happy to do it too.
Okay,
You know, if we could try to get somebody so it represents all of us, every
Sure.
single one, because
so I'll do it, Eric, Tina, and so someone from IRA.
come on, Ira, we just gave you money, speak up.
Time to earn your keep. Tell me.
Look at this.
Okay, I will, meet with Chris and, we'll put some dates together and send those out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to new business, local education agency plan, Part B approval. Who wants that?
So, I'll start. I think, I know Christine's on here as well, and, or Christine, do you wanna, I know you just popped
Yeah,
up, so.
those are the, usually for the EDURB grant
Yeah.
funds,
Yeah.
those are just our assurances that each year we have to sign, just saying we will use the money in the way we're supposed to, and, the board chair has to sign that. And then
So a motion would be in order to authorize the board chair to sign the local education agency plan assurances for fiscal year 2023.
So
Make a
moved.
motion.
Motion by Tina, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So, I don't know if other boards have picked their board retreats or have discussed this. We have at Quarry Valley. And, I think it's important that we haven't had a board retreat for a little bit, that we do that at the SU level. And the primary, really should be setting our board goals. And one of the things I think we have to keep in mind, and I spoke about this at Quarry Valley, is that while we have several districts, we have one superintendent.
Right.
And so it is very important, and the way we'll be looking at it at Quarry Valley is we'll be setting a goal for our board, a goal for the board with our building administrators, and then a goal to send to the SU to work with the superintendent. And I think it would be helpful if each board did that, so that when we craft board goals for the SU, that the expectation is not that each board has independent goals with Chris. We talked earlier about unification, about moving forward. Curriculum's only one piece of that, but for us to have movement and to make any kind of real progression forward, the board goals that we are selecting need to, in some capacity, solidify us. And they have to be of a nature that are serving all of our districts, so that Chris is working with us to help the unification of the SU. Questions?
You said board goals to work
with
The
Chris?
superintendent
Mhm.
specifically?
So it would be the board goals from this body would be working with the superintendent for the SU. So for example, I mean, kind of our overarching goal currently is the strategic plan, right? So that's serving all of our districts. So I don't think it's beneficial for us to have independent goals from each board to Chris, so that Quarry Valley has a goal that we expect Chris to work on just for Quarry Valley. Rutland Town has a goal that they expect Chris to work on just for Rutland Town, because there's no unification in that. There's no working together. You can have within your own district board goals. You can have within your own district board goals with your building administrator, what you want to see in your building, expectations, those kinds of things. But when we talk about having, from this board, having goals with the superintendent, those goals need to somehow touch all of us and support all of us and move us all forward. So if Quarry Valley goes to our board retreat and we come back and we say, these are our 5 goals, and we want Chris to help us with these goals, and then Tina comes and she's, Chris, these are our goals. I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a madhouse. And we've seen how that hasn't worked in the past with superintendents since our merger. And I also think that in the place we are with the strategic plan, that we should be able to come up with like 1 or 2 strong goals. In the past, at the SU level, the most we ever had were 3 goals, and most of the times we carried those goals when we were our old SU, sometimes for a couple of years, and then if we felt like we had adequately covered or met the threshold for a goal, we took that off and put the new goal at the bottom. So I just think we all have a lot on our plates right now, particularly with the strategic plan, with that's a huge piece that's going to unify us, along with the curriculum. And I don't want us to get bogged down in having multiple goals for the superintendent. So that's my thought out to the board. And we, like I said, we discussed that at Quarry Valley, and that's how we're going to move forward in our retreat. So I think it's important that each individual district comes with the goal for the superintendent, so when we meet for our SU board retreat, we talk about and see like where Rutland Town is, where Middletown is, where Quarry Valley is, and how we can weave those goals so that they benefit all of us.
Makes sense. I mean,
So we have ours August 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you're saying that we should meet individually, then come together with what we've planned so that we can form an SU
Yeah.
goal. So we should probably meet as a SU board after we've all met
Had our
individually. So ours
retreats.
is August 23rd.
Okay. So I guess that would mean we would kind of be planning our SU retreat maybe sometime September. So we can look at, why don't we say so if we do that in September, in July for this board, what's the expectation that we'd be looking at in July for this board?
Budgeting.
Okay, so we still want to do that, okay, all right. All right,
So if we go through to September, and because it's beginning of schools too.
yeah,
Could we use the same date as our
Board
Grcsu?
meet-
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, that would be fine, I don't have any, and just make that the focus of the meeting, yeah.
You know, if there's other important work we need to get done.
Yeah,
would
that's
be
what
minimal. Yeah,
that's what we're doing at Quarry Valley for our July meeting.
Right.
So we're kinda, okay. So let's plan that our September meeting will be considered our board retreat. And, we'll determine if we're going to have it here, if we're going to have it someplace else. It would be an in-person only meeting
Right.
when we do board retreat and discuss goals, so that gives everybody a little time to think about that. And yeah, we'll get back to you with the location of that in September then.
Now,
But
if we,
it will be for the regular scheduled date, yeah.
do you want to have a potluck dinner?
We could.
I mean, it's probably gonna be cheaper than finding someone to cater it, but,
We'll see.
okay.
Well, I'll get back to you next month about what we're gonna do.
Jeez, one more thing. Postpone, no, I'm only kidding.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, so we'll set the board retreat for the SU September meeting, and that will be an
21st,
in-person only meeting.
isn't it?
I can't do it, that's the
Yep.
third Wednesday.
At this 6 p.m. normal time, right?
Yeah,
What's the date of that?
I don't have that in front of me, but it would be,
September 28th.
28th.
Yeah, that's better.
okay. I guess the only other question, and I asked, we discussed this at Corey Valley also, so I'll ask you, and I don't know what you're doing in yours, but do people feel like they need to have a facilitator, or do you feel like, as a board, we can just sit down and have a discussion?
I think we just sit down and have a discussion. I've never been to one with a facilitator that really amounted to hell of beans.
You don't like picking your marker and writing on the wall?
No, not my thing.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure.
I mean, it's up to everybody, but
Yeah, that's why I'm
personally-
asking what people's preference is. I mean, we've done the gamut of them, so.
Yes.
I don't think a facilitator is a bad thing. I mean, it's just a matter of finding the right one.
Well,
Yeah, I guess the facilitator, I feel like you end up with their plan other than kind of like the goals of, I don't know. We had the VSBA come and we did that whole little thing. Are you north? Are you south? Are you east? Are you west? Are you northeast? Are you northwest? And went through all of, and never discussed any goals.
No.
Never came out with anything. So it was like you had this whole meeting.
and I
So I
think
don't
people
care.
are more open if there's not a stranger in the
Doesn't-
room,
I'll do whatever people want.
but
Well, the last time Wellspring set board goals, I thought it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because we actually set goals and found, goals that everyone could rally behind, and so that's my experience behind it. I thought it was worth it and meaningful. So.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the board? I'm gonna go with.
I mean, I can go either way. Like Eric said, it kind of depends who you have as a facilitator. And if you can just jump right into actually doing the goal setting work instead of spending time doing whatever the other, and I understand like icebreakers and all that. I understand the value of that, but we have like a 3-hour time slot. I don't want to spend an hour not workshopping what we're supposed to be workshopping. So so it does depend who you get.
Get right to
I
it.
don't know what the options are out there. I know we've had this is the same facilitator in multiple institutions and in our region here, and she's good, but we
Right.
rarely accomplish what we want to accomplish within the time frame set. So
Yeah.
and she's not good at her job. I'm just saying I have always come away disappointed with the amount accomplished. That's all.
Well, and
Maybe
I think
my
our
expectations are too high. I don't know.
yeah. If every board comes with the goal, that's going to be the essence of the conversation. Is discussing those, and I mean, I think our primary goal is kind of looking at unification and how we can weave those in. So, I'm gonna make the decision that we're going no facilitator. I don't see anyone jumping up and saying that. And the other concern is facilitator may change the
Dynamic.
Well, not the day, but when we meet, because then you're
Right.
at their schedule, so. We'll try it this year, and this year, if it doesn't work, next year, whoever's in charge can do something else. And hopefully we come out with, you know, I think as a group, we all have the same kind of expectation moving forward for the SU, and that we can come up with goals that are beneficial to each district, but reasonable and manageable and attainable, so. All right, moving on to policy. We have a few second read policies. Are they all now? So the first policy we have that's second read, A1, role of policy, F15, student attendance, F16, use of restraint and seclusion, G9, responsible computer network and internet use, D4, volunteers and work study students, F9, admission of non-resident tuition students, F24, student freedom of self-expression in school-sponsored media. And those are all the second reads. Were there any questions or concerns about those as presented? These have all been to other boards and should be ready to accept.
So, I have a couple things.
Okay.
I had a question, on the, model policy on the VSBA website.
Mm-hmm.
It says that when these are posted, to the public, that we're supposed to remove the footnotes. I was just curious if that's done.
The footnotes?
Yeah, the references that are at the bottom, are for our benefit when we're creating the policies and doing that, but they're supposed to be removed when they are posted for some reason.
So what are you talking about? Where it
So,
says
like-
16 VSA?
Like, so yes, so that would be an example. So what it said, and I took a photo of it from the website so I could read it somewhere.
Aren't the VSBA writings in that book suggestions?
So it says on the information of the model policy manual, it says, as the references and footnotes in the model policy should not be published with the policies when they are adopted by the board. As model policies are revised, we note the revision dates on the links to each policy. So, I don't know, it just said,
So read it again.
What Tina's saying is like, if you look at F16.
Yeah.
Footnote number 1 is more a reference for boards as they're adopting policy, but as you adopt this policy, that should be removed, because that's really just for board reference, it's not really for public consumption.
Well, I can see that, but I don't see what the harm is if it references the statute, I guess. To me, I think that is a little bit of clarity for people that are reading it. I mean, if it,
Unless the statute's changed, and so somebody would have to be on top of not only
But
the
if the
policy, but the
statute-
statute.
I don't know, it was just, that's
so
what it
none
said
of
on
this at the
website.
back should be referenced either, where it says legal references,
The legal references are fine, cause they're not
Well,
footnotes,
that's
I
the
think.
same as the footnote.
Oh, no, it
Those are the
says-
statutes.
No, you're right.
So,
I mean,
It's just for when you, develop your own policy language, that's the only reason that they put them in there.
yeah. So there's other revised policies that you haven't seen yet, or I've removed some of those footnotes. But some of the, I can see, some of these legal references, and some of the other footnotes that reference a legal reference. I can't say for sure if, like, for example, F16, if that was a revised one, I'd have to go back and look, or if that's just a policy that we've reviewed and just approved it for adoption. So, but, I mean, yeah, I can see where in some cases the footnotes would be irrelevant, but, yeah.
Okay.
So I was just going to propose that when it comes back for the second read, that they should be removed, just like they should be ready to be posted.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're not removing where this, are you removing this also?
No,
Okay,
not the legal references.
okay, so just, okay. All right, Tim, I'm sorry, you had your hand up.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Covered, thanks.
Okay,
And then on A1, I wanted to bring this up because this is,
okay, wait a
The-
second.
it's the first one.
All right, no, I have them all out of order.
Roll in adoption of school board policies.
Yep,
So if we read it, under policy development, it says, when the GRCSU board has approved a policy for distribution to the member boards of the GRCSU, the policy will be distributed by the superintendent for consideration by each member board. As it stands now, the way that we've been doing it is the policy committee spits it out to all the boards. And then we use the GRCSU board as the final say.
stamp.
But
Yep.
actually, what we're supposed to be doing is the policy committee brings it to the GRCSU board, where we have a great discussion, go through it. Once we approve it as the GRCSU board, then it's supposed to go to the member boards.
So why send it to the member
Yeah,
boards if the
because-
Grcsu's already approved it?
Yeah.
so that's a
do they-
suggestion from the VSBA.
Right.
But that's what this says right here too.
It
and which is
says
what we're approving.
GRCSU board has approved a policy for distribution. Well, but we have given by committee, the policy committee, the authority to distribute.
To the GRCSU board, and then from there, it's supposed to go to the member boards.
Well, we've always done it this way, even since the RC, and I know that when we merged, one of the reasons we chose to do it this way was because, and I know we use this word far too often, but the uniqueness of our supervisory union, because we have a pre-K through 12. You have a pre-K through 8. Eric has a pre-K through 6. And so when we sat here as the SU, what may be problematic for those individual districts don't always get caught here. And so going to member boards, and I mean, we can change that.
Well, I think that when, in your individual board, you can decide whether or not you're going to have that for your board, can't you?
Well, we should have it, our
It- it
policies
should-
are union.
Yeah, we're a unified and we're adopting things by the SU, and we don't want to start getting into, and we already have a few carve-outs because Ira has a couple, Middletown had for, I'm gonna say driver's ed, is that
Driver's ed,
wrong?
right.
Yeah, driver's ed, and then we have a student choice policy.
Yeah.
Right.
So the goal was when we merged together was not to continue to have all these carve-out policies. Otherwise, Rutland Town has policies, we have policy. And when we were our old SU, and I'm sure Middletown, Wells, Pulteney were like that as well, Rutland Town had policies, Proctor had policies, West Rutland had policies. And then we merged, or didn't merge, we merged all of our policies because it's difficult for your superintendent to operate with all of every district having their own policy. So I personally don't want to go back to that and start having where we send a policy and Corey Valley says, I don't think we like that. We're not going to adopt that because we have too many people that move through this SU from building to building. So if all of a sudden they're in Corey Valley and we didn't adopt it, so that doesn't apply. And then they go to Middletown and they go, this policy, we adopted this policy. So now if you're in Middletown, you have to adhere to it. I personally want us to continue to adopt SU policies.
And I don't have a problem with that, but I just feel like, even in this essential work of Vermont school boards, it says the policy, after it comes from the policy committee, goes to the supervisory union board for approval and on to each district board for ratification. So our SU board is comprised of members from every single
Sure.
board. Policy committee is from every single board.
Well, I don't know. It seems like it's
Well,
never
supposed to be,
changing.
but,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is it now? Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
It's supposed to be
Oh,
two
yeah.
from each
Okay.
board, right?
Yep.
okay.
one
So
from Ira.
I feel like, if we do it the opposite, it takes forever for the policy to get through, because
Actually, I think it's quicker, because if it goes to all of us individually who make up the board, we might have suggestions, whatever, it's incorporated. And each board has looked at it. By the time it comes to the Grcsu board, it should be ready to go. So otherwise, if it came from the Grcsu board and went to our individual,
Still has to come back.
it's still gonna have to come back to the Grcsu board again for final approval.
Yeah, because what you're saying is, we approve it here, and you're simply sending it out to the member boards to adopt. And if that board has an issue, so this policy goes out, we adopt it here tonight, the policy goes out. Corey Valley hates it, says we're not gonna adopt it. But everybody else has adopted it. Then it still has to come back here, get sent back to the policy committee, and we start the whole cycle over. I think that we're working at the kinks, because like when policies come to us at Corey Valley, I say, these are policies for first read. If you have a concern, an issue, a question about them, email Eric, I don't know if anybody does. And if it's substantial, ask to be put on the agenda, send him what you think the concern is, the suggestion, and he then takes that to his committee and they discuss it. I don't know, I think it's doing it the other way makes it difficult. I think it's easier to, change the language in this policy myself. But-
Chris, what sounds like it'd be easier?
Well, I don't know, it'd be easier, I mean, Eric has done a great job with the policy committee, I mean, just,
Yeah.
and I think this is something where, you know, Eric and I have been working on this for close to 2 years, and I think it's been a headache, for us for 2 years, just trying to work through these kinks. I think part of, you know, I even said, you know, I was a step back a little bit, just 'cause, you know, 'cause we had, even when Eric and I were both trying to do stuff, it was, you know, I messed something up, or it just, you know, it was just difficult to do. So Eric really has kind of taken on this role, and I think has worked through a process. I would say if we were looking to shift a process, maybe after we've finished with this round, and then we can look at redoing, you know, like, so if we then shift to go back to GRC, back to the local boards, then we could try it. But we're, what, 3/4 way there, optimistically? I mean, so I think it just would be, and it would, I don't know, I'll speak and I'll turn over to you, Eric, because I think you, but I think by going to the GRCSU and then back, I think we're adding just another meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think we'll, and I feel like sometimes policies just get stuck. Sometimes they come up here, it's like, formatting, or one board says, no, I don't like this, and then we go back, and then even on the second read, there are no guarantees, because it might go before a board, one board might sit there and say, well, I don't like this particular aspect, and it's like, okay, well, we go back and we take a look at this. The good thing about the GRCS would just be the fact that we work together, and, you know, because I think sometimes we do see through like independent districts' eyes, and more in terms of an SU policy, and I think it's where, but I would not, I mean, I know that this is what it says, but I think there's a process we've been engaged on 2 years. I would like to finish this process and then explore as we move the next round. But like I said, it's just, I'm there in an advisory role. It really is the board's policy, though. It's the board's decision as to, in terms of how you want to work through this, so.
Yeah, I agree. So, great catch. And, you know, I'll say that the policy committee has evolved so much. And currently where we're at, and you know, just as Chris said, after our April meeting, you know, it reached out to me, like, you know, about trying to change this process to make sure that we're not getting old policies that are sent out to boards instead of, you know, correct revisions. So the last month, I think we've made huge grounds. And the policy committee itself, I'm excited because, like, every meeting, like, a full participation, and we have meaningful conversations that, you know, we're actually doing this work. So we're almost there. depending how each meeting goes, we only have an hour and a half. And, you know, with respect to everyone's time, we try and get through as many policies as we can. And so, moving forward, after we're done, you know, I would say if we need to rechange how this committee, you know, takes on new policies or existing policies, absolutely. I do like the way Lisa put it, though. You know, this board can give the policy committee the authority to, you know, recommend these policies. But the way the process is, it's very time consuming, and just to get a policy adopted, you know, we're talking 3 months, essentially.
Well, I think that part of my problem is that when it comes to the GRCSU board, it feels like it's still in process sometimes. Like it hasn't gone to all the boards and been rediscussed in the policy committee again.
Yeah, but it doesn't always have to go back to the policy committee.
No.
So, like, so it comes, I mean, so we start the beginning of the month. So, like, whatever, let's say we started with these. So we all have these for first reads, right, for this month. We have school crisis, board member education, and all that. So, unless there's any substantial concern, question, or change, it doesn't necessarily have to go back to the policy committee.
Well, shouldn't it wait until it's been approved as a second read for every single district before it comes back to us at the GRCSU level, if we're doing it your way? That's what I'm trying to say.
That's typically how it is. So
Yeah, but these have been to everybody else.
So I can give you an example. So we had our policy committee meeting last night, and we had 5 returning policies from this month. And so we went through, and some of the policies we, you know, accepted changes and recommendations. Essentially what happens is all those policies, we start the process all over again. So this month, you saw policies that were first reads, and they're gonna be first reads again next month because they went through the change.
Right.
And so, and it goes through all the way through GRCSU. Now, one of the issues that is that originally we had the policy committee at the beginning of the month. So that way, where there was plenty of time for warning, you know, that's another issue. But so far, the last couple of months, it's been toward the end of the month. So that's good, because as toward the end of the month, as boards, you know, send policies back, they can get them on the agenda quicker for the committee instead of waiting a whole. That's essentially what we did. But basically, everyone should be on a given month. All the local districts should see those first reads and the GRCSU, and then next month for second reads or adoption, all the local boards, and then the GRCSU. And I know it's kind of backwards in terms of the policy, but you know.
But like all of this, I mean, this is what we saw at Coy Valley. These are what you should have seen at Rutland Town.
So, right.
Okay.
But then some of the things haven't been fixed yet. So, for instance, there's still formatting errors that were mentioned that are still there too.
Okay.
But and then we still, if we're not going to do this, then should we be approving a policy that says the opposite of what we're doing or want to do?
Policy you're looking at?
A1.
So we can
A1, I'm just wondering if that should go back to committee so you can change the
or we
the
could just hold
procedure.
that policy.
It's really procedural.
Yeah, we could just hold that
Right.
policy till we go through all the other ones. And then at the end, if you decide you want to change that, you could, or.
Right. Well, I mean, essentially, this policy is a revised policy.
Yeah.
And so if we, you know, I think this one better outlines than our previous one.
Well, I think
So-
her objection is that it says it's going from GRCSU to.
No, like the policy in whole. Like,
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
okay.
But as far as that language goes, you know, essentially, you know, we would just put it back on the agenda at some point, you know, probably.
So we could just say tonight, we're not going to adopt that policy.
If that's what the board wants. If they don't want to adopt this policy, then.
Well, it's not what
but-
we're doing, and it's not the plan to do, so isn't that the purpose of the policy, is that we have something to look at, that's what we follow?
Mhm.
And if that's not what we're following, then it doesn't make sense to me to adopt it.
I think it should go back to you, Eric, back to your committee,
Okay.
and put it the way it is. It goes out, it
Or
goes to the
discuss it
committee,
further
then
if
back
you
to
wanna
the
do that,
board.
or you wanna do
Right.
it this way.
Right, I mean, I guess, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I think all the other local boards have adopted this, so.
Well, if the boards want to do it that way, then we should be doing it that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two ways to look at it, right?
You're talking about procedure, that the policy doesn't match the procedure.
Right.
Right.
She's talking about, it's policy development.
Yeah.
That she's talking about.
It says here that we're supposed to approve it as a board and then send it out to the member boards to ratify, which is the opposite of what we're doing. And if we did technically all approve this at the local level, then that's what we should do. We should change our procedure, right, to match the policy.
I think we should send it back to the committee just to switch that around, Eric, and then bring it back to us.
So you could just switch that first sentence on the second paragraph. That the approved policy for distribution will be sent to member boards at the GRCSU.
I
And
mean,
I
we're just
had-
getting the hang of it.
Or,
I'd hate
you
to
know,
change it
this-
again.
This board could, grant the policy committee the power to do that, to distribute, approved policies, I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, that's essentially what I feel like we did do with this committee.
it
That
is
we
a
gave them
GRCSU committee.
the authority to create and
Update. yeah.
update policy and to distribute that policy to districts. So,
That's how I was interpreting how this read.
Right.
Originally, how this policy reads, is that the GRCSU board designee essentially
Right.
is the policy committee, because it's a GRCSU committee, it's not a district level committee. So
right.
that's in my mind, but maybe because I'm on the policy committee, that's how I was thinking about it, but.
She's holding the
Give a little-
power.
Give a little authority.
Well, when I was on it, that's the way I
Yeah.
interpreted it too, so.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we hold that policy? We'll send it back and let them talk about what they think the policy says and come back to us in the June meeting, and we can make a determination at that meeting.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
All right?
All right, so, but, again, I'll say it again, all the other boards have adopted this
Yeah.
policy, so.
Well, it's the pleasure of the board. I'm just
But aren't we
offering
the ratifying
suggestions.
board of that? Isn't that?
Well, so that's the way we're operating, and that's the way we've operated for a while, that we allowed everyone else, and then we put our final stamp on it as an SU policy, so,
It started out where it was the executive board
yeah.
that did the policies.
Yeah, it did.
And put them in the book. And put them in the book.
It did.
And I'll just add that, if this was caught 2 months ago,
Yeah.
in committee, which is where it should have been caught, let's just say,
Well, I think
Or
it
on the
is a
first
level of
read.
interpretation of how
Right.
you're reading the two separate paragraphs, though.
See, I thought the committee was working on behalf as our designated board. They're the
Right,
ones that
because
did
the
it, not the board.
GRCSU, or this board created the committee, so they are a designee of this board.
Correct,
With the authority vested in them from this board.
right.
But the ratification comes with with the adoption by the whole board. So
Right.
That's how
Right.
it
Right,
becomes policy.
right.
but, we'll definitely bring this back for discussion.
Whatever
Thank you.
want.
We can solidify
tell
that
me.
language so it reflects more clearly what we actually do. I think
Okay.
that he's
And-
right, we need to make sure that our policies
Okay.
say what we are doing.
And so even though these secondary policies have footnotes, can we consider those not substantive changes for adoption? It's not changing the intent of the policy.
There's also a couple other just formatting errors, and I did highlight them, Eric. Do you just want me to hand them to you?
Yeah.
For, that was for F15 and A1, F16. It's just like, sometimes there's just a space missing, or there's too many spaces, or something like that. It's kind of,
Some a printer would observe.
right.
And this was from her too.
Oh,
So can
yeah,
we?
I mean,
We,
like,
can we say we could adopt these second read
Yeah,
policies with Tina's
Formatting.
formatting corrections, because there's no substantive change to
I
the
make
policy?
I make a motion.
Except for A1.
I make a motion that we go ahead and adopt B through G.
Okay. Any discussion?
no, I'll just, and like I was mentioning earlier, part of this, new process is ensuring that we don't have any rogue policies and all these typos are taken care of, like,
Yep.
like the ones that you, sent me earlier.
Correct.
Or earlier this month, those have already been corrected. and-
Okay,
Thank you.
Sometimes you look at it this whole time, you just don't see it. because
that's
you
right,
didn't
you read
spend
it too many
all your time.
times.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes you
for the
just don't.
last, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You know, it's always been like a clerical issue. Like I said earlier, like we
Right.
we have an hour and a half to work on policy development. So, I always thought that, you know, a lot of that stuff would be taken care of, you know, at the SU. And there was just too much stuff flying around. So I think this new process that, we're working on will definitely show better results.
Thank you for the time you're putting into that committee too. It's a lot, I know.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor to adopt B through G with the removal of footnotes and the format changes.
Correct.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And then for first read, we have E2, School Crisis Prevention and Response, B1, Board Member Education, F4, Education Records, D3, Substitute Teachers, F19, Student Self-Expression and Student Distribution of Literature, and D7, Unlawful Harassment of Employees. These are all first reads. If there are errors that need to be corrected, Eric is the person you should be sending those to.
May I, discuss something? D7,
In
which,
D7?
Yeah.
Sure, let me find that.
this was brought up at our Rutland Town School
Okay.
Board meeting.
Hold on.
I know which one. I know which one.
D7.
Last one, ma'am.
I don't even see
It's the last
D7.
It's the last
It's the
one.
unlawful harassment,
It's what?
unlawful harassment of
Okay.
employees.
What
On the
page are we
second
on?
page, number 5.
Second page, number 5. Does everybody have that? Okay. Second page, number 5.
So, I know that this, 40 and older age
Yeah, that's-
requirement
Yeah.
was taken from somewhere, but I disagree with it.
Can we take out the exact age?
I think it can go I think ageism harassment can go younger or older.
Right.
And so
God.
I would like it removed.
So we did
Just
talk.
take that section out, yeah?
Yeah, we did talk about this last month.
Just
And,
The
you know, the
age
committee,
40.
we had a discussion on it, and I think the primary two issues, or the two, reasons why we left it was that, one, it's, I guess, standard language was the first one,
It's directly from the Age Discrimination Employment Act of
Yeah.
1967.
and the second one,
Thank you.
From 1967.
They
Okay.
have
Who was
updated
president then?
it. That's where,
Yeah.
that's where this language is being pulled.
Oh, but it's federal.
But I don't think it changes the intent if you just take out the section that says
Well-
40 or older.
the thing that, you know, sticks with me is that if you go to the first page, all of these examples are listed under examples. So it's not like criteria for using or implementing the policy. It's just listing an example for
Of
for
what the
example.
harassment could be.
So that could be the age 30, it could be the age 50, it's just an
Right,
example.
Oh, these are all, 1 through whatever, are just
All
examples.
Just examples.
Gotcha.
I'm just saying, if you're
I
an
didn't read it all
employee
in.
and you read that quickly, you're gonna think, well, I can't file, I'm only 39.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it takes away from it
Can't
if you
teach them
remove it
anything.
either.
But how does that work if it's part of a, what did you say, part of a federal?
It's, yeah, the Employment Age Discrimination Act of 1967, so the.
Maybe we should sue them,
So
because
it's-
they're
That's where
discriminating.
it's pulled from, so that's.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so, I
Just
mean,
done
That's
at
really
random, it
good.
was pulled right from federal language, so, we build the model policies.
so, I mean, I guess, Rutland Town could always adopt this policy and take out the 40.
No,
my-
because then, now you're
No,
taking.
but then that becomes a
cutouts,
carve-out
yeah.
policy.
But the thing is
my
that they are
God.
model policies, they're not necessarily, you have to take them verbatim either.
Right.
Well, and if it's just an example, then.
But I still think I think that if someone is reading that quickly, they won't see it as just an example.
Well,
you could
it'll
put
cut
stars-
down,
No,
it'll
I'm
cut
saying
down on
that's why
grievances.
you
could
can
put stars
change it
up here
because
and
it's
then put
just an
stars by each
example.
one,
and say-
so that it refers
It
to-
doesn't reference the,
I
it
mean,
doesn't reference, oh wait, please be aware.
This
oh.
is a required policy, so the other policy we deal with are, can be like recommended, or, so
Right.
this is a required policy, and this is the language right from the model policy in the VSBA around that, so, just for point of reference.
Can we just bold maybe examples and then put like stars next to each of these, because they're examples only?
Examples is bold, to me, it looks like.
No, I'm just talking about the section itself.
Oh, I
So
mean,
that it stands out even more if somebody's reading it. Or just saying these are examples only.
yeah, I mean,
These are all very odd, the way they're written.
They are.
we've reviewed this in committee twice now. So, I mean,
What if we put in parentheses something that GRCSU does not tolerate age harassment regardless of age or something like that? Could we amend it in that? Leave what that is, but at the end of age, in parentheses, put something like that at the.
I think then you're
But my only-
changing the body.
Right, I think my concern here is that this
Okay.
is sort of
Right.
legally proven
Yep.
language, and that's probably why it's been there, and probably why it was adopted.
Well, it doesn't reference
Legally-
that as a legal reference
No, but
back
I'm just-
here.
I'm
Which is,
just assuming that.
which is interesting when you look at the legal references.
well, one thing that we do talk about when making changes in committee is, well, if we make this change, does it make the policy better, or does it make it worse? And I don't think taking that out is gonna make it better, or make it worse. I just think it's, yeah, again, we have, we don't wanna have these carve-out policies.
No, we don't.
But how do we address issues where, and I think that's something that, maybe we could just talk about now. How would you like the committee to handle issues where, policies just keep coming back because, like, we go through, we look at this, okay, well, we don't accept that recommendation for change, and we send it back through. And then it gets
So-
sent back again
So like
because we didn't make that change.
one district isn't accepting the change?
Right.
Right, for example.
Well, I think personally, I think if that continues to happen to you as a committee, then you could bring those here.
As a second read, saying there is one we
Yeah,
could not
and we
reconcile.
could, we could discuss it here and see, because I don't think that as a committee, you should have to continually review a policy because one district is upset, well, it's my
I think the
district.
major problem
Yeah,
is
well,
this
and
is
I'll-
here.
Oh, yeah.
No, and I'll say that we've already got one policy that we've had this happen with, and
What is the policy? Just
H2, and it got shoved to the back.
what is that? What is the policy about?
Community use of, school, of buildings, community use.
Oh,
So, we spent a lot of time on it, and there was just, issues around the language,
yeah.
but,
I missed that and then went to
So,
the other started
And
reading.
I understand. I think
Yeah.
that's, so, yeah, that is a really tricky one because I'm guessing like in Middletown that it's like anybody can come, the schools are open, kind of thing.
Yeah, pre-COVID, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like in some districts, like we have building use forms, you need to provide insurance. If it's not a school function, then, you know, there's a lot of parameters. And I think, I mean, I'm not making excuses, but I think like in some of our buildings, like you can't shut off all the sections of the building. So if somebody's in a building for something, you know, it's open to, and I just think there have been some other schools in the area where there have been some incidents where they had, events, and there have been, some insurance, issues.
Right.
I mean, we could always talk about that in executive session if you want, and that has kind of just made people hyper vigilant. I mean, I see that even in our town. In our town, we have facility use agreements for any kind of municipal property.
You have to, yep.
And so, like, I'll just say in Corey Valley, we have to be respectful of every community, and everyone has to be following the same rules, because if we're not, then, you know, we're all going to have to pay for that, so.
Can we go back to this one for a sec?
Sure.
You wanna tell them or you want me to?
You do it.
What are we
I
talking
think
about? Sexual harassment again?
No,
Oh.
the employee unlawful harassment.
Okay. Oh, and
So, I'm back on that, and I now, looking at this, know why I took it wrong. Is there any way we could just end the first page after number 4 and put examples on the top of the next page? Because they're split by pages, I didn't associate them.
See, I didn't
and then
get they were examples.
That was my problem
to
too.
the-
Hearing your explanation now, it makes me feel better. But
You're gonna force this one probably down to the next section, but you've got this here anyway, so
Right.
it fits. So it's
Yeah.
easy.
I think that's
Have
an
a
easy
page
fix.
break.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
It's a formatting issue.
right.
And in the next 3 or 4 years, when we redo this again, maybe some other
Have fun.
federal law will have changed.
And maybe they'll update it.
It's
Yeah.
1983.
Maybe it'll be the
Something.
45. Okay, so that sounds good. All right. So we're good with
Great,
that?
great, great.
So that will, when you see this again for a second read, it will be,
Okay.
Awesome.
And then on that one also, just under number 3 for definitions, the A, B, and C, I just think formatting wise should be indented a little bit, just to break it up, so it's not in the same
Oh,
line
on the
with 1,
first
2, 3, and
page.
4.
Oh, you mean?
It just
the A
didn't
down.
push them in.
Yeah, just tab it.
See, like right here?
Another formatting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Printer's eye.
yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, our next meeting is June 22nd. We have an executive session. Everyone online should have received the link for the executive session. If you didn't, please speak now so we can send that to you. Does everyone have that? No.
Doesn't it look like
Kristen
Tim, the
doesn't.
way he's sitting there?
Did
It
you
looks like he's
check
got
your
a dunce
spam
hat
folder,
on.
Kristen?
Yes. For an ice cream cone.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna accept a motion at 8:23 to move into executive session, and we're gonna move in, let's say at 8:35.
I'll make a motion.
Kristen, it was sent to your GRCSU email, so just,
I got it, I found it, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, motion by Tina to move into executive session for teacher negotiations and contract discussions. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll excuse everyone else, and we'll see all of you back here at 8:35 on the executive committee, or executive session link. Thank you.